Welcome back to the tea party. We're not quite all mad here yet, and today I'd like to share with you how I mend my jeans. Let's start with a quick overview of everything that I'm going to cover in this video. First, I'd like to talk about materials that I use and under which circumstances I use them, how to stop a hole in your jeans from fraying, which this can happen even if you've patched it, if you didn't address the fraying beforehand. I also want to cover the patching process itself, and of course, decorating the patch. And today I'd like to share some Sashiko techniques. Let's go ahead and get to the meat and potatoes. When it comes to choosing materials to mend a pair of jeans, it's important to consider what that pair of jeans is actually made of. The majority of jeans that are sold today have some amount of spandex in them. Sometimes you still have 100% cotton, but the majority have some amount of spandex. For those reasons, I would typically recommend using a patch that has a little bit of stretch to it. But even if I was going to mend a pair of 100% cotton jeans, if I was going to be mending a hole that's like near the knee where, you have a joint that's going to be bending, I prefer to use something that has a little bit of stretch to it even in those scenarios, just because it's more comfortable if the fabric is giving while you're moving. I've seen a lot of scenarios where people will just put a patch over the hole on their jeans and top stitch it down. But if you don't go around the edges of the hole with something like a whip stitch, you run the risk of that hole continuing to get bigger even though you've patched it. So I like to go around the edges of the hole after doing a trim of all the loose threads, and I like to whip stitch around the edges because that stitch is specifically meant to stop fraying. After that, the patch is kind of just an extra reinforcement or even just a decorative element. I like to focus more on the whip stitching to mend the hole, and then the patch is just icing on the cake. But enough talking, let's go ahead and get started. If you'd like to know how to anchor your thread when you are hand sewing, just leave me a comment below and I can share how to do that. It's good to anchor thread when you're starting and when you're stopping. You do have some options when you create your patch. I wanted the stretch on my patch to run up and down on the leg of the pants versus the stretch being horizontal, just because it's at the knee. And I cut this into a rectangle. You could also cut your patch precisely to the shape of your hole. There's lots of options. You could cut it into a heart shape or a star. But I tried to just get something large enough to cover what needed to be mended. Please don't cut things like that on top of your project. Do as I say, not as I do. And you could serge the edges of your patch. I used a zigzag stitch because I figured that would be more accessible to more people. I just did the zigzag on my sewing machine. And you could do your patch on the outside or the inside. I decided to do it on the inside just because I like the look of it better. And you could also go around and stitch the raw edges here to your patch, but I did not do that, again, because I'm using Sashiko techniques. So I didn't think it would be necessary. But it was helpful to just go around and pin my patch in place. And I don't know if you saw it, but I also have one of my quilting rulers inserted up inside the pant leg of the jeans. so that I'm only pinning the patch to the top layer of denim. I am not including the back of these jeans or the bottom layer of the denim in my pinning. I did try using 6 threads of embroidery thread, but it was a little much to manage, so I switched to just 3 threads. And here, because this was so far away from the hole that I'm patching up, I wanted to just do a little whimsical design in that corner just to anchor that edge of the patch down. I will say with Sashiko, usually the back should be just as aesthetic as the front of your piece. That was not the case for me, but I didn't worry about it because no one's going to be seeing the insides of my jeans but me. This is the process of drawing a grid, and this helps with the Sashiko stitching. Once you have your grid drawn on, the world's kind of your oyster. You have lots of options in terms of stitch types or stitch designs, but the grid is really the base of it. I'm going to link off to a video that I found on it that was super helpful. They also talk about the ratios of your lines. If I had this to do over again, I would have used a smaller ratio. I used a 4 to 7 centimeter ratio, and I probably should have used 1 to 2. Using the larger ratio meant that I had greater distances in between my stitches, so I have some bits on the back side of my pant leg here that I'll just have to be mindful when I put my pants on that I don't snag my toe in them. But using that smaller ratio would have been better. I also did some additional outlining with my yellow chalk just to help me envision the end product a little bit better. And this did take some big brain time, a lot of flipping back and forth just to tie things off. But all in all, I would say it's worth it, and it is fun. It's kind of relaxing. But let's go ahead and see the final result. With Earth Day having just passed, plus everything that's going on right now with our economy, I figured this was a perfect time to do some mending, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this also gives you some ideas of ways that you can mend your clothing in a visible technique so you don't feel as pressured to hide your stitches or hide your mending or your knots. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think Sashiko lends itself to the idea of imperfection being beautiful. That's one of the many things that I love about it. If you're interested in more DIY content about self-awareness, or just some fantasy geek millennial lady and her cat, go ahead and subscribe. I upload videos most Fridays, and I'll see all of you ethereal little dumplings again real soon.